We are Homo sapien. It implies that we are rational beings. We can invent, we can create, we can discover new things, we can solve very difficult problems, and all these innovative activities are attributed to optimal functionality of our rational brain or new cortex. So just beneath our rational brain, our emotional brain exists, and our emotional brain comprises very important structures including hippocampus and amygdala. Now, hippocampus is consolidating short-term memories into long-term memories, and it is also processing and generating and regulating our declarative memory, our explicit memory, conscious memory, our episodic memory. Now, amygdala is generating and regulating all our basic emotions, including anger, fear, joy, sadness, surprise, and disgust. And it is also repository of our unconscious memories, our implicit memories, our emotional memories and learning. Suppose I saw a person in a market, my hippocampus will tell me that he is your old colleague. He was serving with you while you were serving in some specific organization. Now, amygdala will add the emotional flavor in that dry memory, and amygdala will tell me that he was a good person or bad person while he was serving with me in that particular organization. So we can differentiate between the dry memory and the emotional memory being regulated by hippocampus and amygdala. Now, what is emotional hijacking? Emotional hijacking is basically the phenomenon in which our emotional brain, our amygdala, is dominating and hijacking the activities of our rational brain or neocortex. And it happens when we are not emotionally literate. Basically, when our amygdala is acting prior to receiving instructions of our rational brain, we are likely to decide impulsively, and resultantly, we are likely to face disastrous results. When we see the anatomy of our brain, there is a tiny structure in our brain that's called thalamus, and it is relay station of all the sensory input, including visual, auditory, gustatory, tactile, and olfactory. Now, from here, it is sending instruction to relevant portion of our neocortex or rational brain. But it is discovered by Ledoux, neuroscientist, that there is a connection, there is a back alley that is connecting the amygdala and the thalamus. And sometime prior to receiving the instruction of our rational brain, our amygdala sends instructions which are not rational, and our sensory or motor reaction would be irrational. No, because this tiny organ is dominating the functionality of our rational brain, it is also called brain bandit. If we are emotionally educated, then we would be able to discriminate the irrational instructions we are receiving from amygdala, and the rational instructions we are receiving from our neocortex. And instead of acting impulsively under the influence of our amygdala, we will wait for the instruction which we are likely to receive millisecond late compared to the instructions of our amygdala, which are not precise and rational. Now, this is the anatomy of our emotional hijacking. Now, if we visualize and we see that 5 to 10,000 years earlier, when our forefathers were leading a life of hunter and gatherer, they were living in jungle and they were facing predators and they were threatened by these predators. So due to this very dangerous situation, their amygdala was very active, and it was also very important for their survival in that particular environment. At that time, probably instructions of amygdala were more important as compared to the rational instruction we receive from our neocortex. So they survived in that particular environment against saber-tooth tiger and other predators. In present situation, when we are protected against these predators, we are living a very safe comparative life. We are enjoying all the amenities of technological world, and we are living in concrete houses. We are living in urban life or in urban areas. So probably at this time in present era, we should wait for the instructions of our rational brain. So we would be able to react according to the real danger, and we should not be under the influence of amygdala. So this can be done through deliberate efforts. It is good news that we are not under the influence of our amygdala always. We are not genetically under the influence of our amygdala. Through deliberate efforts, as it is substantiated through neuroplasticity, that we can educate our amygdala. And second, when we are coordinating the reason and emotionality, we would be able to decide timely. Sometimes, if our connectivity between our rational brain and the amygdala is impaired, resultantly, we would be able to solve very difficult problem, but because our emotionality and our rationality are not connected adequately, we are not likely to decide timely. We need the complementarity of our heart and head. We need the emotional support of our emotional brain for deciding rationally. For taking rational decision, we have to harmonize the activities of our amygdala and activities of our prefrontal cortex. And it can be done, it can be achieved with deliberate efforts. First of all, we have to create gap between stimulus and response. We have to create the gap in which we would be able to insert reason instead of acting impulsively and immediately under the instructions of our amygdala. We have to create gap between the stimulus and the reaction. In that gap, in that gap, we can insert the reason, we can insert the rationality, and we can also able to create that harmony between head and heart, between our emotionality and rationality. Second thing is try to identify your negative emotion. We have to admit, we have to see that we are under the influence of our anger. Now, this anger is not timely, and this anger may lead to highly undesirable results. So, when we would be able to identify our anger, our irrational fear, we would be able to regulate it. Identify your irrationality, irrational fear, irrational anger. Try to differentiate between the perceived danger and the actual danger. Try to see your opponent, not the saber-toothed tiger, but he is your political opponent, he is your religious opponent, he is not the saber-toothed tiger in this civilized world, and he should be tackled, he should be retaliated with reason, with the argument, with the rationality. No, this is the right approach to create emotional literacy, and it can be done through deliberate efforts. Second, the other step is oxygenate. Oxygenate your rational brain, because while we are under negative emotion, under fear, under irrational anger, we our amygdala is consuming all our energy, consuming all our oxygen. So divert the flow of oxygen toward your rational brain. So it would be able to strengthen itself, and it would be able to neutralize the irrational decision and irrational activities of amygdala. Second is, and other thing is, we can create some diary, we can write something in the diary, so we would be able to see that this irrational decision under the influence of amygdala has created lot of problem for us. So in future we would be able to remain vigilant against emotional hijacking. We can also leave that particular situation which is being perceived as threatening. We can flee from that particular environment, so we would be able to restore our rationality and functionality of our rational brain. We can do regular physical exercise. Physical exercise is very important for regulating our negative emotion. We can also start some mindful meditation. It is also a technique in which we are concentrating on present moment, and due to this technique we would be able to enhance our concentration and focus. And we should also visualize our creator, our creator who is Rahman, who is merciful, who is compassionate. So when we would be visualizing a compassionate and merciful, altruistic, empathetic creator, we would be able to stimulate the circuit in our brain which are generating and creating compassion in our brain. These are the things which can be done with deliberate effort, and we would be able to save ourselves from highly undesirable and disastrous results under the influence of our amygdala, who is acting imprecisely, who is acting irrational.